Hello and welcome. This is Jay, and this is our webinar. So folks should be showing up any minute now. And I know that Bastian is coming in here in a moment. So I'll just wait for folks to show up. Hi, there's Bastian. Great. Oh, and I see that we actually already have some people in here. I'm still learning to use this software. Okay, Dave, Paul, great. Okay, I'm going to share the stage with Bastian real quick here. And we'll just give it a couple minutes for our other folks to show up. Video's frozen. All right. Hi, Bastian.
Hi.
Welcome. How are you today?
I'm fine. I'm sorry. I'm still eating, so it's gonna be. I hope it's gonna be really informal because I'm starving. But
it's
fine.
Quite informal. Yes.
Okay.
And you won't make me hungry because I've just eaten. So
yeah, I have some, and it's really good.
I just want to take a minute to welcome our other guests, Dave and Paul. We see that you're here. Thank you so much for being with us. And it looks like we're just 1 minute after the hour. I think we'll probably see a couple more people pop in. I'm definitely expecting Chris, and there he is. Hi, Chris. Welcome. Chris sent me an email today, and Bastian, he's a big org mode fan as I am, and so he was excited to hear you talk as well. Hi, Chris. How are you doing today? I'm going to walk you guys through. Great, Chris. There is a chat on the right-hand side of the screen. It's above the green send. If anybody is curious or has questions about the interface, this is a very informal group meeting, as we said. So feel free to ask questions in the chat. And you can interact with us really any way that you want to. We're going to open it up with introductions. We can introduce ourselves in person with the video and microphone, or we can do that through chat, whichever you feel more comfortable with at this point. And so this is our first gathering. This is our first online discussion since we all met up 2 weeks ago at Clojure Remote 2017. And you all were kind enough to either attend my Value of Learning talk or watch it after the fact. And it's now live on the internet as a video on YouTube. So we kind of completed our task of making a video and putting it on YouTube, which was sort of part of the narrative of the talk. So that's kind of fun to see all of that being realized. And so I thought one of the things that would be really fun to do with this group, and when I say this group, I mean, so we have the discussion, discuss.thevalueoflearning.org, which is a discourse website. Discourse is a software that makes it really nice and easy to have rich conversations and keeps the focus really nicely focused on the conversation and discussion. And that was really kind of a nice experience setting that up. It was probably 2 or 3 hours. The hardest part was setting up the email and getting all that stuff connected. But so we have that set up on DigitalOcean, and it uses Docker, and it was all very sort of automated. The setup was really, really painless. So that's available for us. And so one of the things that might be fun is to kind of think of 1 or 2 things that we want to talk about between now and the next time we get together, like what our biggest questions are, and sort of leave off to kind of carry on this online in-person discussion into the forums, into the forum at the end of this. So I'm thinking that I'll make some suggestions about how we could structure this meeting. And then if anyone has any better ideas, they can put those ideas up for, the group vote, and we can just kind of nod and whatever and keep moving. So if at any point somebody thinks we can be moving in a better direction, we'll do that. I was thinking we could kind of split the talk into this meeting into 3 parts, and introductions, a body, and a closing. And during the closing, one thing we could do is maybe take 15 or 20 minutes and talk about like what our sort of big picture, because we're all here for certain reasons. So we have maybe, goals or desires or dreams even that we think this could turn into something cool. What would that be, and why are we here? And so each of us could kind of pitch in our ideas so that this meeting could sort of culminate in like what could the future be like, and what are our individual visions of that, and really sort of having an egalitarian model where no one person's vision is above another person's. We're just sharing. And I also think it might be really interesting in the future for us to look at some consensus type democracy, where we're just really sort of hash things out and consider each other as like a left brain, right brain, where we're like, even if it takes us a really long time to make decisions or to go through a creative process or to figure out like what actions we're going to take, if it takes us 6 months to figure out what actions we're going to take, well, maybe those are really good actions because we went through, that creative process. And in with Betty Edwards, her other book, Drawing on the Artist Within, those 5 or 6 phases of creativity that culminate with the aha moment. My curiosity is, what do those 5 stages of creativity look like in a group setting? And so like, as we're having group conversations and trying to make decisions, and we're going through our individual aha moments and creativity over the weeks and months ahead, like, is there like going to be a big group sort of aha moment where we go, eureka, finally we figured out why we exist and why we've actually been showing up here for the last X number of months. So those are some of my opening thoughts about what we could be working toward at the end of this meeting. In the body of the meeting, we could talk about like just our initial reactions to the talk. I can tell you that, look, I've watched it now 3 or 4 times, and I've sort of, my artistic sensitivities have subsided. So if you have criticism, that's okay. I'm going to take everything that's said today in the spirit of constructive criticism. Don't worry about stepping on my toes, because there's lots of things that I kind of went, oh, wow, all these things I've learned about learning, and there's certain hypocrisies or certain things I didn't apply very well. And so one of those is brevity, and I'm approaching that threshold now in this long introduction. So I'm going to quickly describe what I think we could do as far as introductions, and then really open up the floor, because I'm here today to really listen and hear from you all. You've heard me talk for an hour, and I think it would be great if there was a lot of listening on my part, because I'm so curious about who you all are, why you're here, and what your reactions are. So in the introduction, I thought we could just do a very sort of mini little thing of who we are, share any details that you want to or not about yourself. It's okay to name drop companies. We're marketing neutral here, which means it's like, this is a value of learning brand, but it's I mean, I think we kind of can trust each other. We're not going to spam each other. But I'm really curious, what is it that you're creating? What is it that you're doing? And so like just a little bit about yourself, and then maybe like either a first reaction to the talk, or actually maybe instead of that, because we're going to talk about that in the body, I think what would be fun is what is something that you would like us to accomplish in this meeting? Like what would make this meeting valuable for you? And it could be a big thing or a small thing. And so I'll start it up and just I tell you, I'll wrap up the introductions and talk about myself then, because I really want to open up the floor. So we have Bastian here on screen with us. Bastian, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you would like? How could this today's meeting add value for you personally?
All right. So very quickly, I've been studying philosophy first, philosophy of science, and then I had the opportunity to work for the One Laptop Per Child project. I was already into free software and all that stuff, but this is really when I decided not to become a teacher or to continue in philosophy. So I worked for OLPC, and then I worked for Wikipedia in France. I live in Paris, and right now I'm a developer, and I help projects around cultural heritage. And when I look back, I find that all my experiences were really about learning. Like, even my interest in philosophy were a lot about cognitive science and what the brain does and all that stuff. Then One Laptop Per Child was all about learning, diving into the literature about learning and all that stuff. Wikipedians are crazy learners, and that's why they are so effective and they are so emotional about what they do. That's because they learn in the process of doing, and they learn together. And yes, and also I'm a Emacs fan and org mode maintainer, and I've always been a mediocre programmer. I like this talk by Jacob from the Django framework. He says, I'm a mediocre programmer. So I've been the mediocre programmer from the Emacs community, helping with org mode. So when I look back, I find that learning is at the core of all these commitments. And what I would find useful for the meeting, Emacs, we like it because we can fiddle and we can customize it the way we want. So we spend the day half working and half customizing. So that's a waste of time. And I feel there is this tendency, at least for me, the very tool that you need to focus on your code is also the tool that gives you, that open windows to anything new that you want to learn. So my goal is to understand how I can commit to spend 1 hour per week on the value of learning. Something that I would do for the value of learning would be a discourse post, an email, a quick video, whatever. That wouldn't be a distraction. And that's it.
And I really want to understand your last point, which I think I do get the big picture. And what I'm really interested in is like, you kind of connected that with Emacs, where you were saying that in Emacs, we spend a lot of time with configuration. Is that kind of how you were tying that in?
Yeah.
And so, can you kind of maybe articulate that connection, how you see that? Like with Emacs, we're spending a lot of time configuring things. And so how does that relate to this desire to connect that up with this the Power Hour?
It's very simple. It's like I don't want my right brain to take over. Mm-hmm. Like the exploration brain and the creative brains. I think I'm really into that kind of mode naturally. So when I go into Emacs, I could spend hours reading documentation. And that's what I did for Clojure for 1 year.
Okay.
So first year was about reading documentation because I enjoyed it so much. And next year was about, getting hands-on. So while exploring different ways of learning and the value of learning and all that stuff with other people, which I think is a really nice idea, how can I make it useful for my productivity and my everyday commitments? That's it.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing is the essence of your question is, it's kind of like, hey Jay, this idea sounds good, this spending an hour, but I don't want to sort of like talk about talking or listen about listening. I want to like get right down to it. Whatever it is, I want to get at it and kind of like the what is like the applied version of this where I'm like actually doing it.
Yeah. And yeah, that's exactly this. And while thinking about this, I had one very small idea, and I was wondering if there was something like a Stack Overflow, but for short 1-minute videos, where people would post 1-minute questions and people would answer with 1-minute answers. And the idea would be that to use a medium that is really, human, and where you can see the people asking their questions with all the things that you cannot see while reading the question, and where you could, rate the best answers. Because I think part of the magic behind good talks, like the one Rich Heike is giving, is that these guys are replying many questions we have internally, or we had without even knowing it. And this is they are in a discussion. So I would like this big discussion with faces and people, because I think that's why I went to free software, like, dealing with people and understanding what are their problems. Because when we speak about learning, this is very intimate stuff. And so maybe, do short videos about questions I have. Maybe that would be more useful, or just, giving answers. If people ask questions about org mode, maybe I would be more effective by giving a 1-minute demonstration and answer, more than replying in a written way on Stack Overflow.
And I really think this is an important line of questioning. I really appreciate what you're bringing up here. I think this is something that a lot of people are going to be thinking in the back of their head as they're watching that. And it's something that I was kind of thinking about. Like, it was a very general talk, and a lot of it could have sounded like double speak. Like in some of the talks about Rich Hickey, where I was saying, experts. Anyway, we can get into those details. But one thing I want to key on what you just said is that Barbara Oakley, in her work with the Learning How to Learn course, it's 4 hours of video. The videos are broken up into 5 to 6 minutes segments. Each segment or lesson really contains 2 or 3 important concepts, maybe actually just one. Yeah. And then 2 or 3 like key supporting details to that one main concept. And she uses animation to like she'll duck out of the way as things come onto the screen. And what it does is it makes you constantly watch the screen. So it doesn't let you check your text while you're watching the video, So she calls us adults free range learners. And she says that, a free range learner, we have so many choices as adults of what we can use for our learning. We're very project focused. And this is something I'll just share with the group about you, Bastian, that can lead to more. One of the things I admire about you so much is in our early meetings, you were almost just like, okay, well, like you were ready to run, whatever I was talking about, you were ready to just like fire it up in the REPL, get into a project with it as fast as possible. And so I need that, because I'm more on the theoretical side. I can talk about things all day. So you and I are left brain, right brain on this very issue that you're bringing up. And I think a great balance for each other. And so I would just say that I think the Learning How to Learn videos, she combines like Hollywood with, computer science, with learning science, with these concepts, and tying this back to it's not the facts that are important. It's this mental model that I'm trying to build of this to gain this understanding. And once I have the mental model, which really fits the problem or the situation, then things can start falling into place, and I can start to organize those facts in a better way, because I'm only going to remember so much. And so I think one thing is I would just put this out there, and I'm glad that we're talking about this at the front of the talk. For someone who's listening to this, I would recommend to anyone, if you're looking for something to do with your Power Hour for the first, say, 6 weeks, you could do the Learning How to Learn course, and that would give you, 4 hours of watching the video and 2 hours to take the quizzes and like do a little bit of research yourself. And you could go back and take the course a second or third time and like do all the like follow like the bibliography and the links and go on your own, chasing down the rabbit holes. But I think that almost as like having a common conversation and a common understanding, what I'm also interested in is there are people who that particular course may not fit. I'm not here to so if any of you find some other materials that are like the Learning How to Learn course that you think are a better fit for you, please share that with the group and why, and plug back into us here so that we can, so that people that are like you can also do those things. And so great.
Just one thing about this how to learn about learning. I think what's really interesting is that she builds a story about how you can learn. I mean, it's really amazing the way the video explains how you can start doing this and this. They put you in the shoes of someone who is already making progress, and this is a very strong motivation. And this is speaking about closure. There is this book by Living Closure by Karin Meyer, and
Yes.
and it's there is this idea too there about putting stuff into stories, because that helps about learning, and also because that helps about understanding what's the next step for you as a learner, not just as a programmer. And that's really good.
Absolutely, yes. And to follow up on that, I would just say that the difference between what we're talking about and like a book on just like positive thinking, or some of the things that like people may have, like, oh, I have this vision of what I want my life to be like. Now I'm just going to sit back and not do anything and expect that stuff to happen to me magically somehow. The difference between that type of pitch and what we're talking about is that feeling that you get, like when you see, hey, I could be accomplishing my goals by learning these things. That feeling is motivating, but in order to really battle procrastination, we have to break it down. We have to break things down and get to the first 1 or 2 steps that we need to be taking. I like to try to think 3 steps ahead all the time. So just what's the first 1, 2, 3 steps, and that's it. That's all I need, and the middle of the path will be laid out for me. So I kind of keep this little because I played 9-ball in pocket billiards, and so to run out a rack of 9 balls, I just need to like get shape on the 2-ball from the 1-ball, and then get shape on the 3-ball from the 2-ball, and so if I'm always thinking 3 balls ahead, I can just keep running out racks of 9-ball. Just always thinking, 3 balls ahead. So it's not like we have to figure out all the steps. And I think that's the difference between kind of, good agile Scrum type things and the waterfall method, but you still want to do that thinking ahead of time. And so we want to know where we're going. And if it feels good, that's going to draw us in and help us get there. Now I'm kind of getting on my soapbox a little. I can hear myself raising my voice. So I'm going to open it up for someone else to introduce themselves. We've got 3 more folks with us. And Chris, would you like to come on screen, or would you like to text us your introduction?
Come on screen.
Okay. Set. Great. All right. I'm going to share the stage with Chris.
Can I disappear for a while just to continue having my sushis without spilling?
Please. Yes. So let's see how we're going to do this. I'm going to X you out, Bastian, and so I'm going to
Yes.
publish your video. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
And then you let me know when you want to come back on.
Sure.
Okay. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm okay. It's dark down here because it's really cloudy outside. This room kind of depends on natural light to have any light at all. So,
oh, that's yeah, that's fine.
Hi everyone. My name is Chris Johnson. I live in scenic South Bend, Indiana, and I guess I'll tell you a little bit about my background and how I got to why I came to Clojure Remote, and then what I found interesting about your talk and why I thought it would be fun to come to this. So I have been getting paid to write software of one kind or another for a little over 15 years. A lot of that was Java, and a lot of it I spent about 10 years in healthcare IT at various places, and then I spent some time in the retail, like inventory optimization, allocation optimization space at a couple of different companies. And now I am working for TransUnion, which is a company out of Chicago. They're one of the 3 big credit bureaus. And over the last 4 or 5 years, I've gone from being application developer full-time to more dev ops, and now it's almost more like ops with dev kind of in parentheses at the front, because we're building out a presence in the AWS cloud for the first time. And that's the expertise that I have that I'm contributing to that job is basically in that role. So less writing code, more writing CloudFormation templates and sitting in architecture meetings and that kind of stuff. And I've been interested in and really kind of in love with Clojure for 3 or 4 years now. And I've had relatively little opportunity to use it in anger, relatively little institutional support at the places that I worked. Where I'm working now, I have a lot of support to do it, but it's just like me. So it's like I can write, I can write Lambda functions in ClojureScript to do stuff if I want. Everybody thinks that's great, but there's nobody else there doing that practice.
When you say Lambda functions, is that the on Amazon where you can have it's basically like a function in the sky?
Yes, that's exactly right.
and so for new people that are watching this, it's like a really sort of lightweight way to get started, just to have something out on the internet that will listen to your commands.
Right. So it's like it's kind of like I keep trying to talk with my hands, but my hands aren't in the right spot for you to see them.
That's okay.
So
That's okay.
like when you have like virtual machines, right, where you are basically running a Linux or Windows server that you own and maintain, and then there's you can do stuff with Docker containers, and then Lambda is like even further down that path, if you will, where you're not running any infrastructure, you just write a stateless function that gets some context in an event handed into it, and then you can hook that up to a REST endpoint or to a queue or to some event in your AWS ecosystem, and it can get information about what you are asking it to do, and then it can do some calculations and you put something into an S3 bucket or whatever.
I just want to point out that the person who knows the most about tinkering and deploying with all the different little Dockery things they could be doing is choosing Lambda when they can, and that's like true wisdom. I don't want to deal with it unless I have to. So. Yep. Thank you.
The thing that you have to maintain not at all is the best thing, in my opinion. Yeah. It's kind of the infrastructure and operations version of the line of code that doesn't exist, doesn't have to be debugged, right? But so I came to Clojure Remote because I was really interested in the opportunity to spend a couple days just with other people doing practice in this sort of functional community. My other exposure to the Clojure community, I went to Strangeloop in 2014. It's just been we're so welcoming and so kind of artistic and creative in our approaches to how things work, and I really needed a dose of that. And then I saw your talk, and I even spoke with Ryan, the organizer of Clojure Remote. He had that opportunity for people to spend like half an hour chatting with him, and I took him up on that. And one of the things that I am trying to do, and with limited, I mean, I'm having some success, but not the success I would like to have, is find ways to take this body of skills that I have accrued over the last 15 years and use them for things other than garnering my daily bread, keeping my family in a nice house, to do things to give back to my community. So I'm working on like a couple of little projects myself with the local Code for America Brigade.
Awesome.
But again, it's like, it's something where like, you know, I have an idea and they're all like, that sounds great. When it's ready, come tell us. We'll put it on a DigitalOcean droplet. Like, there isn't a lot of support. So yeah. I'm kind of actively looking for places where I can take these things that I know how to do and put them to the service of improving either the community where I live or communities generally. And it sounded to me like the end of your talk was maybe kind of a call to action in that regard. And so that's, yeah. When you said, well, we're going to get together and talk, I was like, all right, I will come and see what you have to say. And then you said, by the way, the maintainer of org mode will be there. And like, I love org mode. I have to say that like doing literate programming where you can have like your code in blocks inside the text. You know, I know one of the really big innovations in the Apple like iOS development world in the last few years has been playgrounds, right? They keep getting better and better, but they're basically just like a really fancy GUI-fied version of literate programming. And I feel like, you know, org mode is like the classic example of how there are all these tools that people are trying to build to make our lives better. And like, Emacs has been doing them all in one place for a quarter century or something.
Does anyone that's with us today know if the playground on the Apple system is open source itself?
I don't believe that it is.
I don't think so.
Because I think it's part of, well, there's the iOS app that lets you do playgrounds, and then a playground is just a file type that you run in Xcode, which the Swift language is open source, but Xcode itself is not.
Yeah. That was awesome, Chris. I'm blown away that that you know, it's because most of the people that I've talked to are people that I've known. So I think you're actually the first person that I've seen face to face that's telling me. Bastard and I have had a couple of online meetings before, and so you're the first person that I'm hearing. You know, that kind of what you heard from the talk, and that is really cool. Just to kind of share like my view on helping, I guess the way that I see it is, sometimes in the West, and maybe it's because like if people are donating money that's going to go to a cause in somewhere in an emerging economy or on another continent, there may be this feeling of not knowing how the money is getting spent, or people are thinking. I think the thing about it that kind of, I've always felt like, not always, maybe this is the last few years for me, has been a little bit of a realization that it's not really charity at all. It's actually like, now the way I really think about it is, there's an idea that is trapped inside of somebody's head over there that can save the life of somebody that I love that might be sitting in the same room with me right now, someone I deeply love. You know, so it's like, I've got to set that idea, like what can I do with my life to set that idea free? And I think that's what the learning how to learn talk is so much, you know, why I think it is so important, because we're moving into a realm where someone with even just a smartphone or a solar powered laptop somewhere remotely can start accessing information. And if they can teach themselves to learn, that's a crazy idea. Like, to me, like, oh, teach yourself to learn and then learn. And I think I always felt like, because I was spending so much time in school and doing those things, that I was getting really good at learning. And the confidence that I have gotten from the Learning How to Learn course, it's like, I'm not an expert learner yet. I'm not an expert teacher yet, but I have the confidence that I sort of just kind of know, like, that's going to happen. That if I am fortunate enough to live enough days from now, like, and I take these actions, I can get there. And so I feel like I'm just starting out, and it's kind of fun to maybe be with a group of people that that are attracted to this place where I'm at in my life, because we can kind of just learn together. And just the other thing that I kind of want to put out there is, I did IT support for like 9 years. I kind of took the easy way in. I got my Microsoft certified systems engineer certificate. Like I studied for 6 months. I set up the little computers. That was my first experience of adult education. And I took 2 months off after college, and I said, I want to figure out how I can really learn more quickly. And I studied about adult education and being project focused. And that's when I bought 2 computers. They were dual boot. I could do different configurations, have a primary domain controller, backup domain controller, workstation. So I could have all these different combinations between, and like actually whenever there was a scenario in the books, I could set that scenario up and actually manifest it. Mm-hmm. And so that was what I did for 6 months. And the tests were really easy to pass after that. Yep. That was 20 years ago. And even having that experience, it's still, when coming in and learning programming, because it has been a great challenge, and it has been in some ways emotionally challenging for me. It's like I needed another level, and that's what got me looking around. And so I still feel like I don't have all the answers that I'm looking for in terms of this. So I'm still in that quest mode a little bit, even though I've taken the learning to learn how to course, I'm still looking for how to take all of that information and really apply it. And I'm so glad that there are experienced programmers here like yourself. Java is like one of those mysterious things, because I don't have Java experience. I have some Clojure experience. And so to have someone on, in the group that has Java experience is like, to me, that's awesome. So I'm super glad you're here, not just for that, but for the fact that you're connecting with that message of wanting to help. And so welcome and thank you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Great. Is there something in this meeting that would make the meeting, a good meeting for you?
To be honest, I didn't come into it with any expectations. So,
okay.
Excellent audio video quality.
Okay.
That's what, yeah, like, well, I'm just interested to see where things go. I don't have.
Great. And if my microphone gets too loud, you all can let me know, because the gain is kind of up a little high, and sometimes I move it away. But if there's any problems with the audio or video, just type in, and we'll let everyone. Chris, you're welcome to hang out on the screen while the next person comes on, unless you're eating like Bastian.
Well, I might actually slip away for a minute and grab some water. So if you don't mind taking me off, I think that would be fine.
Of course. And then if you'd like to come back on to be like a panel or whatever later, we can do that. So just participate and suggest how you'd like the meeting to go. If there's any topics you'd like to talk about, and we're just very open and flexible. So we want everyone to get some value out of this.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to close you out now. And the next person who is ready to come on can come on. So we have 2 more people. Paul and Dave, if you all would like, if one of you would like to either come on screen or introduce yourself through the chat, or if you're just here to hang out and listen, that is perfectly fine too. So we'll wait for. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, Bastian's done eating. I'm gonna invite Bastian back on, and we'll just kind of keep this a group vibe here going. And Bastian, you can accept that invitation if you so choose. Hello again.
Hey, I'm back.
All right. And so I just want to say, Paul and Dave, thank you guys for coming. And as soon as you would like to get involved with the conversation to any degree, just chat away in the chat, and let us know if you'd like to come on screen at any time to jump into the conversation. And thank you, Chris, for being a brave soul and jumping in there. All right. So yeah, so we've done some introductions, and we are kind of aiming to close up the meeting and talking about like what people would like to do in the future. We actually are so here's one of the things we can do. We have 20 minutes left, which would make this about an hour-long presentation or discussion. As a rule of thumb, if there's any questions that you have that come to mind, you can type those in the chat. If your question is not getting answered the way that you want it to, you can type it into, there's a questions tab, and then we'll get a little notification above the questions tab that will let us know that there's a question waiting there for us to answer. And so if you really have like a question you want documented, you can go into the questions tab and put it in there. And so with our final time, the other thing I was just going to say is that we can sort of officially end at 3:00, and anybody that wants to hang out and ask questions, I'm basically just going to, as a rule of thumb, be here until all of the questions are answered. And so that way people don't walk away feeling like they didn't get something out of the meeting that they wanted to. And then, so we'll just invite folks to sign off, on the hour. And if anyone needs to leave early, please don't feel bad about that. We all understand you have busy lives. So with that said, we do have about 20 minutes left, and we could talk about, we could do a few minutes of like just reactions to the talk. Like, I know you've just recently watched the talk yourself, Bastian. What's your first impression?
Yeah, it was a really good rehearsal for what I learned with the Barbara Oakley course online. I should say I'm sorry, but my English is really rusty and with a headache, so it's not the best.
You're perfectly understandable. Yes.
Okay, that's fine. So I think I relearned many things by watching it. I think it might be weird for people that are non-clojurists, because there is this first part about Clojure Remote and the second part about the things. I didn't try the QR codes. I always wonder if people do it, but I think maybe some do, and that's fine. It's like a promise of something I want to read when there are the links somewhere. Yeah. And I thought a nice thing to do would be to have time codes every 5 minutes or so for each part, because I think it could be scattered into small bits that would be useful by themselves. Each slide on second part is useful by itself, and the references and the book about drawing and all that stuff. I'm skeptical about the thing about the pose, like when you ask questions about how long does it take to go from this drawing to this drawing, how much learning does it take, because it feels like if it's not a real pose that that I control myself, I feel like I cannot think, but maybe that's just me. I'm just staring at the screen, waiting for something to happen. And so then I wonder how Coursera does it. There is this thing where they can break the video before they end. And they ask questions, whatever. So I think it would be nice to have this kind of stuff, having a pause with some polls about questions you ask to the people with statistics about the answers and so on. I don't know. So the poll by himself like that, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, well, just to respond to that very quickly, I would just want to point out that in many ways, my challenge with this was I had a ton of information. And the reason I had a ton of information is because I thought I've got to fill up an hour, so I just did all this research. I could have written a book with what I wrote, and I ended up cutting out so many things. And so I think the talk really sort of like what you're saying is so true. There's a reason a TED talk is only 18 minutes. If you like a TED talks kind of have a formula. They're 18 minutes. There's like one big idea and there's like 3 supporting, you know, things with that idea. And so there's only so much people can sort of take in a certain amount of time. And it would be interesting just to make this talk more digestible to the general public is to look at breaking it down into at least 3 parts of 18 minutes each, or maybe much smaller, like you're saying, 5 to 7 minutes, like the learning how to learn courses.
I mean, for me, I'm fine watching 1 hour talks. You know, I do this every week, and I think people do it. Like, it's just, I don't like the world to be completely disposable for efficiency use that we want to make of it. You know, bits of 5 minutes or 1 minute. You know, this is just marketing, and this is, but just having the outline would help me go back to it. Like if I say, okay, I there was this slide on Jay's talk that with this reference that I want to check now, and then I would go to the outline and just double check quickly after I watch it once for relaxing for 1 hour, watching it in a, you know, this relax mode that Barbara Oakley speaks about. That I think it's also nice to have long, you know, relaxing talks that you can focus on. But
Absolutely.
then this gave me this idea of why don't we have, you know, video FAQ?
Yeah.
I would ask a question for I have my example. I have a 30-second question for the Clojure community. Why I get crazy at having so many files with so many namespaces. So why can't we put everything into just one file? Is it really stupid to do that? I mean, I understand the namespaces, the use, and so on, but it's just not practical in everyday life. Like I don't want to go to Ranger or to some project management system in Emacs just to check the function, and I just want everything in the same buffer. Why is that so complicated?
So, namespaces are a big idea in Clojure, I know. You know, I would just take a shot in the dark, and then I want to invite some other folks to chime in on this, please. But in Clojure, with it being about 3 things fundamentally, you know, identity, values, and time. To me, each namespace tells a story. And one of the things that has really sort of become, I've grown to appreciate about Lisp itself, really, it's a Lisp story as much as anything. But one thing I really like in Clojure, I like the square brackets. You know, I like how you've got the vectors for certain data structures, and then even, you know, the function parameters, how like you can have square brackets to kind of say this is kind of special inside of here, so not everything is parentheses. I like that. Like it's kind of like, let's say I'm opening up a project and I want to like figure out, well, what does everything do in this project? The way things are broken apart in the names, it's really like telling me a big story. And so if I go into a namespace that is, you know, you know,
handler, like
handler, you know, so I know what to expect when I go in that name. So first of all, it's like it's a container for my expectations about what's in there. But as I go in, let's say that I'm just totally new to the thing. I can just first of all scan down the function names, and probably one of the last functions in the file is going to be like this function that pulls everything together and like tells me the story of what's happening. And inside of that function, I can look at the let bindings, and I don't even have to look at the right hand side of what is happening. You know, because the let bindings cleanly separate out the what from the how. And so just looking at the names of the things on the left side of the let bindings, I can just ignore everything on the right. And then that last little bit that kind of does the cool stuff, like that's where I can like really sort of read the code and like get a lot of the story about what's happening right there just from those names. And so I think what's kind of neat about it is that when I first got into coding, and Python was one of the languages that I learned, is, you know, and I really love Python. I think it's a great language. But it has this reputation of being highly readable. But then you get into all these little exceptions about, well, how does the compiler interpret this piece of code? And so you sort of have to like know a lot about certain things, especially on the metaprogramming side. So to have the consistency of Lisp, the simplicity of when you go to write your macros, you're reading the code in the same way that the compiler does. And then on top of that, this separation of the what from the how with the let bindings, the namespaces for me, I think of it as like that's the macro version of those let bindings. It allows me to look through the file structure at the project level and kind of get a story at that level. So it's like it's allowing you to sort of go in from the top and choose how far down that you want to go into things, and it's all sort of telling a story. That's my experience with it. It's not, you know, there's no perfect way. A lot of things, the way that certain things work in Clojure are done in a certain way to keep us from shooting our toes off, especially around namespaces. Like, first of all, just to kind of put it out there, you know, Russ Olson is the one who really I can thank for helping clear up. This is a really interesting case where I overlearned namespaces. Like, I went into Stack Overflow and read 10 different things on namespaces, and by the time I got done, I was so confused I didn't know left from right, because there is a technical complexity behind the scenes about how the symbol points to a var, which is a container, which points to a value, or you know, and so so Russ Olson said, Jay, a namespace is just, you know, a table of names to values. Like, that's what it is, names to values. And so what values am I going to see when I go into the handler namespace? There's like a contract semantically that the values I'm going to see in the handler namespace are related to handling. And from that clean separation, while it is more work to sort of go around and do different things, there is a certain benefit in readability. So I don't want to say it's better than anything else, but it's that certain trade-off. So I want to open this up for a more experienced person to come in.
Just to say that this is the perfect example of a very simple question, 30 seconds, and a very valuable answer with just this notion of a story and the way you read the code. I mean, it's fantastic. All the things and any programmer could learn from having a 2 minutes answer like that, and on the Stack Overflow way, you know, and different answers. You know, I think this would be a way to learn a lot.
I would point out there is a resource I would also recommend for people here. Zach Tellman has a book that has 3 chapters that are published already. I think the book is available on you know what, I'll do a search for that and link to this in the video after the fact. But so Zach Tellman's first chapter is about names, and it's a great read. I've enjoyed the book. I've enjoyed the book so far. I can't wait for the rest of it. So, okay. Chris Johnson says, Bastian, I think maybe you were also asking about why Clojure follows a practice of 1 namespace per file, as opposed to having like myapp.clj with all 22 namespaces you declare in the whole project. Is that so, or did I misunderstand? Yes. Okay.
I understand that. My guess is that there are constraints on the side of, you know, being a hosted language, and that you need to compile files based on the namespaces. But if there was a way to have several namespaces on the same file, then I would navigate my code and I would reshape the stories more easily and I wouldn't be forced to, that's my impression. I feel it would be more organic if I could keep everything on the same file and just write the whole story and as a literate programming.
You actually can. You actually can do that. So I just want to point out that that Clojure is not a one namespace per language. You can have one file with multiple namespaces. So just how like when you're in the REPL and you can like run your NS stuff and change into the new namespaces, you can do that actually in the file as you go. Right. It's not recommended. It's not, people will look at you funny. So, but I just want to say, hey, people, if you're writing code for yourself, break the rules and have fun.
I will.
I mean, you're learning. So
yeah, I'm free of any sin.
Yeah. Am I saying anything incorrect from the more experienced developers who maybe want to kind of take over here, because I'm kind of winging it. So I think that the reason, Chris is saying, so I think the reason for that has to do with the technical details of JVM compilation, where one file is being built into one Java class in the process of building the Java bytecode. Okay, that's really good to know. I think the other thing I just learned from Stuart Sierra yesterday is that if you wrap if you wrap all of the forms in one file in one set of parentheses, that actually will become one method in the bytecode, and there's a limitation on the method size in the JVM. So there is a limitation there of if you're trying to get fancy or something and do something weird. We were talking about that yesterday in the Arachne meeting. And then Dave says, FYI, Eric Norman in one of his courses does just that. Starts off with everything in one big file. And when that gets too cluttered, he broke it out into different files plus namespaces. I really like that. I think that is a cool way to just start out and start hacking. And it fits. It's like halfway of going from the REPL to, now we're writing a project. That feels really cool. Does anybody else want to chime in on that? Chris, did you have any other insights for Bastian about that? Okay. All right. So, well, we're almost, I guess, to wrap up. Step 15. I'm not sure what that means. Is that a Dave? I'm not sure what step 15 is. Does anyone? Does that ring a bell for you, Bastian? Step 15.
I think this is. I'm just checking the link that Dave sent about complete web app from scratch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's from the courses from Eric Norman.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
Yeah, that's great. After doing everything in one Clojure file, we start to separate everything into namespaces. I like that. Okay. I was
awesome, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, because I was inhibiting myself. I think it's not possible, and people will look at me funny if I do this. But if I can do it and grow organic stuff and then split the files later, that's great.
Okay, well, let's see. And then Chris Johnson says m dot jump, or so meta in Emacs, meta dot jumps to the definition of the thing at point. So Chris, I think what Chris is saying here is you can use your editor to jump between the files, and so the different namespaces is less of an issue.
I do it, but still anyway, just in the process of fiddling, just as you said, like something between the REPL and the project.
Yeah.
That I know.
So we're a couple of minutes away from being on the hour, and I just it's one of those things. Time. I know everyone's time is very important. But I am happy to keep talking for a little while. If there are other questions, and we didn't necessarily get a chance to talk about like some of the things that we can do possibly together. So that's something we can save until next time. We don't have to get everything into one meeting. But before we kind of figure out what we're going to do now, I just want to kind of ask while we have everybody here. Right now, I think this meeting started at 7 p.m. Over in Europe. And I just think 7 p.m. on a Saturday night, that's not really probably a great time. I was trying to think about like not making people in Hawaii get up too early when I kind of set this 2 p.m. time. And so the other thing that we can talk about is, for these kinds of discussions, what works better, a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday or a Monday or a Tuesday? First of all, is there a day of the week that people have a preference for? I guess I could create a poll. I'll create a poll and say
Saturday is fine.
Saturday's fine. All right. So what day of week? I'll say what day of week, and then I'll have Friday, and then Saturday. Let's see there. Okay, so I've got a poll up. If you guys want to, is there another day a week that people want to consider? Is there another day of the week besides Friday or Saturday that people want to throw out? So I got one for Friday, one for Saturday, two for Saturday.
This is exclusive, so I cannot vote for both.
Okay, so we got 3 for Saturday, 1 for Friday. Okay, and then I'm going to do another poll, and I'm thinking, just kind of asking you, Bastian. So let's see, 4 p.m. your time would be 11 a.m. my time, and that would be 8 a.m. for the folks in California. So that's pretty early for like a webinar, but then 5 p.m. puts it like at dinner time for you guys.
When I'm available, 6 p.m. is all right. It depends. Yeah. Every 2 weekends, I have my daughter, so I can make it. But when I'm available, any time in the afternoon, even 7 p.m. is okay. So I don't mind any hour.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so 6 p.m. your time would be one my time. The noon my time would be 5 your time. So does 6 work better than 5? Is that?
It's same.
Same.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do other folks want to type in, just to kind of type in some times that they think would be a good? This would be, I guess, universal time. We're talking either 5 or 6 p.m. universal time. So that would be noon or 1 o'clock, or even 11 8, or even so 4, 5, or 6 p.m. universal time would be the 3 choices. I'll put those in here. All right. So what time is best? UTC. That's universal, and that's so Eastern time would be 5 hours less than that. And so I'm going to put it in universal time. That'll be a 4, 5, and 6. And let's add that. Okay, so I've got that poll up. If you guys want to respond, if you all would like to respond to that. And we'll have it kind of figured out at that point.
Should I vote on both polls?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
If folks are still with us, I know we've gone over in time here a little bit. Okay, we've got one at 4, one at 5. So that's interesting because that's a little bit earlier than what we did. So that's helpful. You know, that it's going to be in that time range. I think that's helpful right there. Okay, so
I have one.
This time, yeah.
Sorry, I have one question and one
Yes.
ID.
Yes.
The question is, can we invite people on the forum, like on the Value of Learning forum, or should we just refer them to you and you invite them? How does it work? Like anyone we think we. Okay,
yes.
That's free and
Yes, it's free. It's it's everything's in the spirit of open source. It's just really a place for us to have conversations and organize. You can just send them the link to discuss.thevalueoflearning.org, and they can log in and sign up there. If it's somebody that you feel like might need a little extra help, like getting in there and stuff, then you can send me their email address, and I can invite them. Actually, I can make you a moderator as well, and then you can invite them directly. So anybody that wants to be a moderator can be, and then you can invite people directly. And what that is, they can just click on the link and go in very smoothly.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
And no, sorry, my idea about how to make this 1 hour about learning useful maybe would be to discuss something that we learn, and to have a monthly, or I don't know, every 2 or 3 weeks, like 5 minutes check about how we were successful or what problems we had in learning something very specific. Could be closure, could be, and like the weekly brief about, okay, I was enjoying doing this, it was difficult doing this, and so on. The social commitment to learning.
So maybe what you're saying is like kind of your solution to the problem you presented is, if I know that I'm going to be checking in with a group of people about what I was like what the fruits of my labor is, then I'm going to have some fruit to show you.
Yeah, exactly. I do believe a lot in social pressure, especially for learning. Not pressure, like motivation. So learning, but
would you mind starting a topic on this in the
discussion forum?
In the discussion forum? And I think this could be the one thing that we kind of carried forward and really get the group think going on this week, because I think it's a great idea, and your solution is a great solution, and maybe let's just kind of open it up and see. Like, that's one of those things that would be really cool to see if we can get some group think on it. And I'm not trying to cut this discussion short by suggesting that. So if anybody, if Chris or Dave or anybody else wants to come on screen or in the chat respond to that, we can do that now. Give you a few seconds to respond, and then while you're thinking about that, I just want to say this is a good point. If there's does anyone want to stay on and ask me any questions? Is that something at this point that someone's feeling like they didn't get, everything that they wanted out of the meeting? Okay, so great. I think we're at a good wrapping up point. We can continue this on. What I'm thinking of doing is, I'll probably start a topic. I kind of told folks that I was going to have a discussion meeting for the next 2 Saturdays. And so I'm going to do that even if nobody else shows up. I'll probably just invite 1 or 2 people that I know will show up, and then have like a speaker kind of interview type of thing. Everyone's welcome to those next couple of meetings, and then we'll space these out to once a week. And then I'm going to also be hosting a once a week sort of Ask Me Anything for like new programmers. And they have all these platforms like livecoding.tv. And so it's going to be a place where people can just come in and ask any question that they want. And that might be 2 or 3 weeks away from getting started on that. So what I'm basically saying is that we'll start spacing these meetings out to once a month. And then once a quarter, I'd like us to, I think it would be a really fun idea to organize a hackathon like we talked about in the talk. And that's where we would, get a bunch of people together and just build some stuff online. And I think what would be really neat is if we like had one big idea, got a bunch of people together, they broke out into smaller groups, maybe used like a Peer-in or Skype or Google Hangouts to like go off and have like their mini meetings and go do their little small thing. And then we put all the stuff together. Or it can just be a great big mess. I kind of love the idea of like, let's get together and meet. We don't know what we're going to meet about. We don't know what we're going to build, but we're going to get together and do something and, like throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And then it's like this big experiment in like self-organization and open democracy and kind of a hackish thing, and tying it back in with Chris Johnson's statements about, sort of with the purpose that is something that we can do to make a difference. And probably it will probably have something to do with learning as well. So Bastian, thank you for coming on and spending so much time on screen with us today. It really meant a lot to have someone that I knew was going to show up for sure, and you did that for me. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next time I'm not going to be gray because I can see by the color. Maybe that's my camera. But I'm gray. It's so weird.
It matches. It matches with the black shirt. It's all kind of sepia. It's very artistic. So yes, it works. Okay. And Chris, thank you. Dave, thank you. Paul, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate everyone coming. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. You're welcome, Dave. And thank you, Chris. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Bastian.
Thanks a lot, Jay.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye.